The ballroom at the Riverside Country Club was decorated like something out of a fairy tale. White roses everywhere, gold accents gleaming under crystal chandeliers, and a string quartet playing softly in the corner. My parents' 35th wedding anniversary party was exactly the kind of lavish event they'd always dreamed about. 120 guests, open bar, 5-course meal, and a price tag that probably exceeded most people's yearly salary. I stood near the back of the room in my simple navy dress, watching my mother, Patricia Morrison, glide through the crowd in her custom silver gown. At 58, she looked stunning, every inch the successful woman she'd always aspired to be. My father, Robert, stood beside her in his tailored tuxedo, playing the role of devoted husband and successful businessman with practiced ease. "Beautiful party, isn't it?" my cousin Amanda said, appearing at my elbow with a champagne flute. "Your parents really went all out." "They did," I agreed, taking a sip of my own champagne. "Must have cost a fortune," she continued, glancing around at the elaborate decorations. "But I guess when you've been married 35 years, you're entitled to celebrate big." I nodded but didn't respond. Around us, guests mingled and laughed, everyone dressed in their finest. My brother Jason held court near the bar with his wife Melissa, both of them radiating that particular confidence that comes from believing you're more successful than everyone else in the room. At 34, Jason ran a successful medical practice and never missed an opportunity to remind people of it. My sister Lauren, 29 and fresh off her latest promotion at a tech company, was showing off her engagement ring to a cluster of aunts. Everyone in my family had something to show off, some achievement to display like a trophy. Everyone except me, apparently. "Emily." My mother's voice rang out as she spotted me. "There you are, hiding in the corner as usual. Come, darling, people want to say hello." I made my way through the crowd, accepting hugs from relatives I saw maybe once a year. Most of them asked the same polite questions. How was I doing? What was I working on? Was I seeing anyone? I gave the same vague answers I always did. I was fine. Work was good. No, I wasn't dating anyone seriously. "Still doing that property management thing?" my Uncle Richard asked, and I could hear the subtle dismissiveness in his voice. "Something like that," I replied with a smile. "Well, at least you're working," he said, patting my shoulder. "That's more than some people can say." The microphone feedback cut through the conversation, and everyone turned toward the small stage where my father now stood, champagne glass raised. "If I could have everyone's attention," he called out, his voice carrying that authoritative tone he'd perfected over decades in sales. "Thank you all for being here tonight to celebrate 35 years of marriage with my beautiful wife, Patricia." Applause rippled through the room. My mother beamed, touching her hand to her heart in a gesture of overwhelmed gratitude that I suspected she'd practiced. 35 years, my father continued, is a long time. We've built a wonderful life together. Raised 3 children. Jason, our successful doctor, Lauren, our rising tech star, and Emily, who's finding her way. A few polite laughs. I felt my face flush but kept my expression neutral. This was how it always went. Jason and Lauren were the stars. I was the afterthought. "Tonight I want to talk about sacrifice," my father said, his voice turning serious. "Because marriage, family, life, it's all about sacrifice. And your mother and I made a difficult decision to make this night possible." He paused for dramatic effect. The room went quiet. As many of you know, my late mother, Emily's grandmother, left us her house when she passed 3 years ago. It was a beautiful property full of memories, but it was also just sitting there and used, accumulating expenses. So after much thought, Patricia and I made the decision to sell it. Murmurs of surprise rippled through the crowd. I felt my chest tighten. Grandma Rose's house. The Victorian on Maple Street where I'd spent countless weekends as a child, learning to bake in her kitchen, reading in her library, listening to her stories on the wraparound porch. "We sold that house," my father announced, his voice ringing with false humility, "to pay for tonight. To bring all of you together. To celebrate not just our marriage but our family, our community, our life together." The applause was thunderous. People were actually standing, moved by what they perceived as a beautiful sacrifice. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, the picture of emotional gratitude. "That house meant a lot to our family," my father continued. "But family is about more than property. It's about moments like this. Memories like tonight. And I know my mother would have approved of using her house to create something beautiful for the people we love. More applause. I stood frozen, my champagne glass trembling slightly in my hand. Jason made his way to the stage, taking the microphone from our father. "If I could add something," he said, his voice full of admiration. "What Dad and Mom did, selling Grandma's house for this party, that's the kind of sacrifice that defines real family values. They could have held on to that property, let it sit empty, maybe rented it out for some extra income. But instead they used it to bring us all together." He turned to look directly at me and I saw the smugness in his eyes. Some people understand what it means to contribute to family, to make sacrifices. Others just take up space. The implication was clear. Several people glanced in my direction. My sister Lauren avoided my eyes entirely. "At least some of us contribute to the family," Jason added, his smile sharp. "At least some of us understand that being a Morrison means something." I set my champagne glass down on the nearest table before I could drop it. My hands were shaking now, not from nervousness but from rage. They'd sold Grandma's house. The house that held 31 years of my memories. The house where Grandma Rose had taught me about dignity, independence, and building something that mattered. The house that I'd bought from the estate 3 years ago, the day after the will was read. My phone buzzed in my clutch. I pulled it out and saw the caller ID. Thomas Brennan, my attorney. Perfect timing. "Excuse me," I said quietly to Amanda, who was still standing beside me. "I need to take this." I answered the phone and Thomas's voice came through clearly. "Emily, the Morrison Street property transfer is complete. All documentation filed with the county. As of 4 p.m. today, you are the official owner of the commercial building at 2847 Morrison Street. Congratulations." "Thank you, Thomas," I said, my voice steady. "And the other properties?" "All secured. The Maple Street Victorian is still in your name, obviously. The 3 rental properties on the north side are generating excellent returns. And with this new acquisition, your portfolio is now valued at approximately $18.4 million. "Perfect," I said. "Send me the final paperwork tomorrow." I hung up and looked back at the stage, where my father was still basking in applause for his sacrifice. Then I did something I'd never done before at a family event. I walked up to the stage. "Emily," my father said, surprised. "Did you want to say something?" "Actually, yes," I replied, taking the microphone from Jason's hand. He looked annoyed but stepped aside. 120 faces turned toward me, curious about what the family disappointment could possibly have to say. "I just got off the phone with my attorney," I began, my voice calm and clear. "He was calling about a property transfer. The Morrison Street building, that old warehouse district property that's been sitting empty for years. I just bought it. Added it to my portfolio." Confused murmurs. My mother's smile faltered slightly. "See, I've been building a real estate portfolio for the past 8 years, I continued. "Started with a small duplex I bought for $98,000 when I was 23. Fixed it up, rented it out, used that income and my savings to buy another property. Then another. Over time I built something substantial." My father's expression shifted from confusion to something harder to read. "Today's acquisition brings my total portfolio value to about $18.4 million, I said, letting that number hang in the air. 12 properties across the city. Mix of residential and commercial. All generating steady income." The room had gone completely silent. Jason's face had turned an interesting shade of red. "But here's the thing about one of those properties," I continued, looking directly at my father. 3 years ago, when Grandma Rose died, her will stated that her house on Maple Street should be sold and the proceeds split among her 3 grandchildren. You remember that, right, Dad?" My father's jaw tightened. "Emily, this isn't the time. You told Jason, Lauren, and me that the house needed extensive repairs," I interrupted. "You said it would cost more to fix than it was worth. You said the smartest thing was to sell it quickly, take whatever we could get and move on. You offered to handle everything." My mother had gone pale. She knew where this was going. "You found a buyer willing to pay $240,000, I continued. "A quick sale, cash offer, no inspection. You said we were lucky to get that much. $80,000 each, split 3 ways. Do you remember telling us that?" "I remember," my father said quietly. "That buyer was me, I said and watched his face drain of color. I bought Grandma's house from the estate for $240,000. Gosh. No inspection needed because I'd been helping Grandma maintain that house for years. I knew every pipe, every wire, every shingle on the roof. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Jason looked like he'd been slapped. So when you stood up here tonight, I said, my voice still calm, and told everyone that you sold Grandma's house to pay for this party, you were lying. You don't own Grandma's house. You never did. I've owned it for 3 years. My father opened his mouth, then closed it. For the first time in my life, I'd seen him speechless. I've been living there, I continued. Restored it, actually. Spent about $100,000 on renovations. It's beautiful now. Worth roughly $480,000 according to the latest appraisal. I kept it quiet because Grandma always valued privacy over performance. I turned to address the room. My father didn't sacrifice anything tonight. He made up a story about selling a house he doesn't own to make himself look noble. And he did it at the expense of his mother's memory and his daughter's reputation. Emily, my mother said, her voice shaking, you don't understand. I understand perfectly, I said. You needed a story. Something that made this expensive party seem like a meaningful sacrifice instead of just an expensive party. You wanted people to admire you for giving up something precious. But you gave up nothing. My phone rang again. I looked at the screen and smiled. Actually, this is perfect timing. Excuse me. I put the call on speaker before answering. Hello. Ms. Morrison? A woman's professional voice came through clearly. This is Jennifer Chin from Riverside Country Club. I'm calling about tonight's event. Our records show a balance of $42,000 for the anniversary party. Payment was due yesterday, but we haven't received it yet. Can you confirm when we'll receive payment? The silence in the ballroom was deafening. Every single person heard that call. $42,000. Payment overdue. My mother's champagne glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the marble floor. Jennifer, I said calmly, this is Emily Morrison. I'll handle the payment. Bill it to my account. I'll transfer the funds first thing tomorrow morning. Thank you, Ms. Morrison. Should I update our records to show you as the primary account holder? Yes, please do that. Wonderful. And just to confirm, that's the same account we use for your standing reservation for the club's private dining room. That's correct, I said. Thank you, Jennifer. I hung up and looked at my parents. My father's face had gone from pale to ashen. My mother looked like she might faint. You haven't paid for your own anniversary party, I said quietly, but my voice carried in the dead silence. You told everyone you sold a house you didn't own to afford a party you can't actually afford. So let me ask you, Dad, what exactly did you sacrifice tonight? Emily, we were going to pay, my father said, his voice strained. We just had some cash flow issues this month. We were going to. You were going to what? I interrupted. Hope someone else would cover it. Hope the club would forget. Hope you could keep up appearances long enough that it wouldn't matter. Jason stepped forward. Come on. This is humiliating them in front of everyone. Like you humiliated me 5 minutes ago? I asked, turning to my brother. When you implied I don't contribute to this family. When you suggested I just take up space. I didn't mean. Yes, you did, I said. You meant every word. You've been looking down on me for years, Jason. You and Lauren and Mom and Dad. You all decided I was the failure because I didn't follow your path. Because I didn't become a doctor or work in tech or marry someone impressive. I addressed the room again. I build real estate portfolios. I renovate properties. I create housing opportunities. I employ contractors, property managers, maintenance workers. I've built an $18 million business from nothing, and my own family has spent years treating me like I'm worthless because I don't brag about it. 18 million? Lauren said, speaking for the first time. Her voice was small. Emily, that can't be right. It's right, I confirmed. Want to see my portfolio? I've got documentation on my phone. Bank statements, property deeds, tax returns, the whole thing. You're a millionaire, my mother whispered. Multiple times over. Yes, I said simply. I am. And I've been quietly succeeding while you've all been loudly assuming I was failing. My father found his voice again. Why didn't you tell us? I tried, I said, and for the first time I let some emotion into my voice. Do you remember 4 years ago when I mentioned buying the triplex on Sycamore Street? You changed the subject to Jason's new car. Do you remember when I told you I'd secured financing for the Morrison Street warehouse? You asked me when I was going to get a real job. I tried to tell you. You didn't want to hear it. But $18 million, my father said. Emily, if you have that kind of money, why do you dress like? Why do you live so modestly? I supplied. Because I don't need to perform wealth to feel successful, Dad. I don't need a custom gown or a tuxedo or a $42,000 party I can't afford. I need properties that appreciate, tenants who pay rent, and investments that generate returns. Everything else is just performance. I looked around the room at all the guests watching this family drama unfold. I'm sorry you all had to witness this. You came here expecting a celebration and instead you got the truth. My parents threw a party they couldn't afford, lied about how they paid for it, and used their daughter's supposed failure as part of their narrative. Emily, please, my mother said, tears streaming down her face now. We made mistakes. But don't do this. Don't humiliate us like this. You humiliated yourselves, I said gently. I'm just refusing to be part of the lie anymore. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. With a few quick taps, I initiated a transfer. There. $42,000 to Riverside Country Club. Your party is paid for. Consider it an anniversary gift. Emily, my father started. But here's the thing, I continued. This is the last time I clean up your mess. The last time I let you use me as a punchline. The last time I watch you perform success while actually failing at it. We're not failing, Jason protested. I run a successful practice. Lauren has a great career. Our parents have built a good life. Have they? I asked. Dad, how much debt are you actually in? The question landed like a bomb. My father's silence was answer enough. Medical practice doing well, Jason? I pressed. Or are you leveraged to the hilt with equipment loans and facility expenses? Lauren, that promotion you got, did it come with enough of a raise to cover your student loans and your credit card debt? No one answered. The truth was written on their faces. You're all performing success, I said. Designer clothes on credit cards. Luxury cars with payment plans. Big houses with bigger mortgages. You look successful but you're drowning in debt. Meanwhile, I live in a modest house I own outright, drive a paid-off car and wear normal clothes. And I'm the only one in this family who's actually wealthy. My Uncle Richard cleared his throat. Emily, I think perhaps this conversation should be private. Why? I asked. My family had no problem discussing my perceived failures publicly. Why should the truth be private? I turned back to my parents. I love you. But I'm done pretending. I'm done letting you minimize my achievements so you feel better about your performance. I'm done being the family disappointment when I'm actually the family success story. We're proud of you, my mother said desperately. Emily, if we'd known. You should have been proud of me without knowing my net worth, I interrupted. You should have respected my choices. You should have asked questions and actually listened to the answers. The fact that you only care now that you know I'm rich tells me everything I need to know. I set the microphone down on the stage and looked out at the crowd one final time. Enjoy the party. The food is excellent, the bar is open, and it's all paid for. Happy anniversary, Mom and Dad. I walked off the stage and headed for the exit. Behind me, I heard my mother calling my name, but I didn't stop. I'd spent too many years stopping, waiting, hoping they'd see me. Tonight, I'd made them see me, and that was enough. In the parking lot, I sat in my car, a practical 4-year-old Toyota that was reliable and paid for, and took a deep breath. My phone was blowing up with text. Jason calling me dramatic. Lauren saying we needed to talk. My mother begging me to come back inside. But there was one text that made me smile. It was from my tenant in the Sycamore Street triplex. Rent's paid early this month. Thanks for fixing the water heater so fast. You're the best landlord I've ever had. That text was worth more than all the applause my parents had received for their fake sacrifice. I started my car and drove home, to Grandma Rose's beautiful Victorian house on Maple Street, the house I'd saved and restored, the house my family didn't even know I lived in. The house that represented everything I'd built while they weren't paying attention. The porch light was on exactly as I'd left it. I climbed the familiar steps and unlocked the door, stepping into the home I'd created for myself. Every renovation had been intentional. Every design choice had been mine. This house wasn't about impressing anyone. It was about honoring Grandma Rose's memory and building something real. My phone rang. I almost didn't answer, but then I saw it was Lauren. What? I answered more harshly than I intended. I'm outside, she said. I left the party. Can we talk? I went to the window and saw her car in the driveway. My sister sat behind the wheel, phone pressed to her ear, looking small and uncertain. Come in, I said. Lauren knocked softly and I opened the door. She stepped inside and looked around, her eyes widening as she took in the restored hardwood floors, the original crown molding, the careful blend of vintage charm and modern updates. This is Grandma's house, she said, her voice barely a whisper. Yes. You saved it. Yes. She walked through the entryway into the living room, touching things gently. The restored fireplace mantel, the built-in bookshelves, the bay window seat where Grandma used to read. It's beautiful. It's exactly how I remember, but better. I tried to honor what she built while making it functional for modern life, I said. Lauren turned to face me, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry. Emily, I'm so sorry. We've been awful to you. I've been awful to you. Yes, I agreed because there was no point in pretending otherwise. I was jealous, she admitted. Is that crazy? I was jealous of you because you seemed so calm, so unbothered by all the pressure. Mom and Dad were always on my case about my career, my appearance, my relationships. But you just did your thing and didn't care what they thought. I cared, I said quietly. I just learned to hide it. $18 million, Lauren said, shaking her head. How did you even? Where did you start? So I told her. About the duplex I'd bought at 23 with money I'd saved from working 3 jobs through college. About learning property management from YouTube videos and library books. About my first tenant who taught me that being a good landlord meant being responsive and fair. About slowly, carefully building a portfolio while everyone assumed I was just barely getting by. Why didn't you tell us? Lauren asked. Would you have believed me? I countered. If I'd walked into a family dinner 2 years ago and announced I was worth $10 million, would you have believed me? Or would you have thought I was lying to make myself feel better? She was quiet for a moment. Probably the latter, she admitted. We'd already decided you were struggling. Evidence to the contrary wouldn't have changed our minds. Exactly, I said. You'd built a narrative where Jason was the successful one, you were the rising star, and I was the disappointment. That narrative was comfortable for everyone, so questioning it wasn't worth the effort. What now? Lauren asked. Are you done with us? I considered the question. I don't know. That depends on whether you want a real relationship with me or just access to someone with money and property connections. I want my sister back, Lauren said. The real one. Not the version I invented in my head. Then you need to actually see me, I said. Not the version you want me to be. Not the version that fits your story. The actual me. I'd like to try, she said. If you'll let me. We talked for another hour, and for the first time in years, it felt like a real conversation. Lauren told me about the pressure she felt at work, the debt she was hiding, the relationship with our parents that felt more like a performance than genuine connection. I told her about the properties I was considering, the renovations I had planned, the life I'd built that no one in our family had bothered to see. When she finally left, promising to come back soon, I sat on Grandma Rose's porch and looked out at the neighborhood. This house, this life, this success. I'd built it all without my family's approval or support. I'd done it for myself, and that made it mean more, not less. My phone buzzed with a text from my father. We need to talk. Tomorrow. Please. I typed back. Not tomorrow. I need time. I'll let you know when I'm ready. His response came quickly. I understand. I'm sorry, Emily. For everything. It wasn't enough. Not yet. But it was something. I sat on that porch until midnight, watching the stars and thinking about sacrifice. Real sacrifice. My parents had lied about sacrificing a house to look noble. But I'd actually sacrificed for years. Sacrificed their approval, their pride, their recognition, to build something real. And as I sat there in the house I'd saved, in the life I'd created, surrounded by proof of everything I'd accomplished, I realized something important. I didn't need their approval anymore. I had something better. I had the truth.